Look at the sweet couple who were walking together holding hands, but 3 hours later, one of them died tragically. What on earth had happened in just 3 hours? At around 4 a.m. on August 23, 2017, a doctor at a hospital in Wumu Town, Sichuan Province, heard a faint cry for help. The doctor immediately ran over to check the situation, and he was shocked by the scene in front of them. A man was lying on the ground in a pool of blood. He was already without breathing, but the doctor still tried to save him. However, the man died eventually. During the treatment for the man, the doctor found that he had been stabbed twice in the chest, which were fatal injuries. This meant that he was killed by someone, so the doctor called the police. Soon, the police arrived at the hospital and began their investigation. Upon seeing the victim, the police immediately recognized him as Gou Hua, a well-known local entrepreneur. He had 3 major businesses: a brick factory, the pepper industry, and highway construction. Wumu Town was a very small town, and Gou Hua was the richest person in the town, so almost everyone knew him. Considering Gou Hua's identity, the police first considered whether it was a business competitor or enemy who killed him, but the police quickly ruled out this possibility. During the interviews of Gou Hua's staff, the police learned that he was a trustworthy and honest businessman with a low-key personality. He had been doing charity work and had a good reputation. He had never had conflicts with anyone in business. In the local area, most of his peers were business partners, and there were no competitors who had a bad relationship with him. The police had no suspects for a moment. Then, they checked the surveillance video of the hospital to see the situation when Gou Hua came to the hospital that night. Sure enough, the police made an important discovery. It turned out that Gou Hua didn't come to the hospital alone that night, but was accompanied by a woman. This is the scene when Gou Hua just arrived at the hospital lobby. At this time, it seemed that he didn't have a major problem. A few seconds after he walked up to the second floor, a woman also appeared in the video. She followed Gou Hua right after him and ran up to the second floor. After arriving on the second floor, Gou Hua walked straight to the doctor's office, but the woman suddenly turned around and walked downstairs for some reason. However, after only 5 seconds, she came back and chased after Gou Hua. "20 seconds later, the woman and Gou Hua appeared again in the video. At this time, Gou Hua's injury seemed to be worsening, and he walked into a room with the woman's assistants, waiting for the doctor. A minute later, the woman hurriedly walked out and went downstairs. Another minute later, the woman came back and walked into the room. After more than 6 minutes, the woman left the room again. This time, she ran downstairs and never appeared again. Why did the woman who accompanied Gou Hua to the hospital leave and return 3 times? Why did she leave without waiting for the doctor? The woman's behavior was very suspicious. The police watched the surveillance video several times and found a shocking detail. When the woman went upstairs for the second time, it seemed that she was holding something in her hand and stuffed it into her pants. When the woman finally rushed out of the room, the police saw that the woman seemed to be holding a knife in her hand. The wounds on Gou Hua, who just died, were knife wounds, so the woman in the surveillance video was the major suspect in this murder case. To find the woman, the police sent out a police dog. The police dog followed the trail and quickly led the police to a parking lot. In this parking lot, the police saw bloodstains on the ground, so the police initially concluded that this might be the first scene of the crime. What happened here? Then the police retrieved the surveillance video of the parking lot and saw a scene that puzzled them. At around 1 a.m. on the same day, Gou Hua drove to this parking lot. After getting out of the car, he walked to the side to smoke. 2 minutes later, a woman got out of Gou Hua's car and walked over to him. Then the two held hands and walked towards the car together. From the video, it looked like the woman was snuggling on Gou Hua's shoulder, and the two looked very sweet. Could this woman, who seemed to be very close to Gou Hua, be the murderer? At that time, the first thing the police needed to do was to find this woman. The police asked the staff of the parking lot if they had any impression of the woman in the video. The staff recognized that the woman was an employee who worked near the parking lot, named Li Chunmei. In the following video, I will call her Li. The police rushed to Li's house immediately, but another unexpected situation occurred. After Gou Hua was killed, Li also had an accident. When the police arrived, no matter how they knocked on the door or shouted, no one answered or responded. However, neighbors said that they just saw Li returning and she should be at home. Realizing that something was wrong, the police entered Li's home through the window. As soon as they got in, they found her lying on this bed, in a coma. Her skin was all purple, and she was obviously in critical condition. The police immediately sent her to the hospital. Thanks to timely rescue, Li was out of danger. After her condition gradually improved, the police began to question her about Gou Hua's murder. It was only then that police learned the truth from her. It turned out that Li wanted to take poison to end her life. The reason she did so was because of her affair with Gou Hua. 6 years ago, Li's husband was sent to another city to work, and he rarely returned home. Li took care of their 3 children alone at home. At that time, she not only had a difficult life financially, but also felt suppressed and lonely emotionally. By chance, she met Gou Hua, who had a successful career. Gou Hua was also married and had 3 kids, but he still pursued her vigorously after they met. In his eyes, Li was beautiful and caring. At first, he called Li more than 10 times a day, caring about her life and talking to her. This touched Li a lot. Moreover, Gou Hua often bought Li gifts, which made Li even more attracted to him. Therefore, the two quickly became lovers. However, this affair was soon discovered by Gou Hua's wife. She found Li and scolded and beat her. However, this didn't make Li give up, but rather, because Gou Hua's wife scolded and beat Li, Gou Hua felt guilty towards Li and treated her even better. On the other hand, Gou Hua's wife often quarreled with Gou Hua about this matter, which made the relationship between Gou Hua and his wife worse and worse. Therefore, Gou Hua and Li not only didn't separate due to being discovered, but instead their relationship continued to heat up. Gou Hua even swore to Li that he would divorce and marry her in 3 years. Such a promise made Li even more determined to be with him, and she divorced her husband.
可这么说嘛，一个男人可以说双手举起来发誓，对天发誓，我要是对不起你怎么样，这是我有生以来第一次遇到这样子的人，所以说也就投入到这个人身上去了。
Since then, the two no longer hid their relationship, but appeared together openly. When hanging out with friends, they appeared as a married couple.
在任何场合上，包括他的那个。在平常来那个应酬啊，或者吃饭，或者要谈啥子事啊，从来都是以老婆的身份见出来的，从来我们都是以夫妻的那个身份出场。
But do you think Gou Hua will fulfill his promise? Gou Hua's wife resolutely refused to divorce. Besides, in these nearly 20 years, Gou Hua had gone from a driver to a wealthy entrepreneur, and his wife accompanied him since hard times. It can be said that Gou Hua's wealth was created by both of them. Gou Hua would never give up half of his property. Indeed, 3 years had passed and Gou Hua didn't divorce. He made other excuses to delay the divorce and promised again to divorce in the next 3 years. This time, he even wrote a commitment letter.
他好像是写的就是我嘛，永远属于他的嘛，他永远属于我的嘛。
At this point, Li, who was overly attached to him both financially and emotionally, couldn't leave him anymore. So when Gou Hua asked Li to wait for him for another 3 years, Li agreed.
我确实好像也离不开呀，那么我再等你3年。
In the blink of an eye, another 3 years passed. Li didn't get her dream wedding, but instead, Gou Hua asked for a breakup. Gou Hua and his wife had 3 children, and as the children gradually grew up, Gou Hua felt that his affair would be bad for the children, so he wanted to end his relationship with Li. Gou Hua's decision once again reflected that in his heart, Li was nothing compared to his family. However, at this time, Li found out that she was pregnant. No surprise, Gou Hua didn't want the baby and asked Li to have an abortion, which Li agreed.
他就不想要，也是为了他嘛，你高兴打我打的就没一样。
However, after the abortion, Gou Hua's attitude towards her completely changed, not calling her anymore. When Li called him, he was annoyed. Li realized that Gou Hua was deliberately distancing himself from her, thinking that during the past 6 years she divorced for Gou Hua, and she didn't even care about her children, spending all her thoughts and time on Gou Hua, but in return, she was abandoned. She was both angry and resentful, so she had the idea of revenge.
我可以24小时不顾我儿的可以为他服务。也就是你当初，作为朋友啊，社会上的朋友，我们说哈子那个，说白了，你至少我们相互说玩而已，这个我能接受哈。但是我不希望他欺骗我一次一次的欺骗。
The day before the crime, it happened to be the Chinese Valentine's Day. During the day, Gou Hua took Li to a fancy restaurant for a meal, and then they went shopping. Li, who was very happy, thought that they had a chance to get back together, but she didn't expect that in the evening, Gou Hua officially broke up with her. He offered to buy her a house so that she could have her home in the future. However, Li resolutely disagreed. She asked Gou Hua to sleep at her home in the evening, hoping to win him back with sex. Unexpectedly, Gou Hua rejected her this time.
我真的是以前从来都没说我要求了的话哈，你要求到我到我家里面去住，都是他自己主动的是。
Gou Hua's heartlessness made Li give up hope. Then Li proposed that Gou Hua accompany her to the parking lot for a while, and Gou Hua agreed. From the video, Li seemed to accept the fact that they had broken up and looked calm, but what happened later made her kill Gou Hua. According to Li's statement, they returned to the car and slept for a while. At around 3:30 a.m., Li woke up first and looked at Gou Hua sleeping next to her. Thinking about all the effort she had put into this man without any good results, she became increasingly angry and picked up the peeling knife in the car and stabbed Gou Hua. At that time, Gou Hua's injury was not very serious. Seeing Gou Hua injured, Li suddenly came back to her senses, so she drove Gou Hua to the hospital. However, Li didn't completely calm down. She still felt that Gou Hua shouldn't be let off so easily. After repeatedly struggling, finally, anger defeated her senses. Li stabbed Gou Hua again, causing him to die. After killing Gou Hua, Li fled the scene and quickly drove back home. She felt so desperate that she decided to end her life. Fortunately, she was found by the police in time and sent to the hospital. She was saved.
我说生是他的人，死是他的鬼，他死了，我们就同归于尽。他不是对于我来说，也没啥子，他的心都变到了，我也没啥子，也挽留不到了。对于我来说，也没得生存啥子意义了。
After almost died, Li regretted everything she had done, but it was too late.
只能说抱歉吧，对不起，伤害了他们每一个人。事情会的重来的话，我不会走这，应该学会拿得起放得下吧。
Later, in Li's garage, the police found Gou Hua's car that appeared in the parking lot on the crime day. Inside the car, the police found a large amount of bloodstains and a peeling knife. Finally, Li was sentenced to life imprisonment for intentional homicide.